Boa noite, pessoal. Meu nome é Felipe Genari, estou mais uma vez aqui com vocês para um evento hoje que vai ser super legal, né? Vocês vão ter bastante informação aqui de qualidade. E como a gente sempre começa aqui os nossos eventos, a gente fala um pouquinho aqui sobre a Daqui para Fora. E na conversa de hoje, né, além da Holly apresentando um pouco mais sobre a Carleton College e sobre, né, o modelo de ensino, né, de liberal arts, que bastante gente conhece, a gente vai ter mais dois convidados aqui Daqui para Fora, que daqui a pouco eu vou chamá-los aqui, a Lígia e o Gabriel. No final da apresentação, pessoal, vocês podem também fazer as suas perguntas para a Holly, e eu vou pedir para que vocês façam as suas perguntas utilizando a aba do Q&A aqui do Zoom, que aí fica muito mais fácil para a gente conseguir, né, e acompanhando, tá? Então, para quem ainda não conhece, a Daqui para Fora é uma consultoria que desde 2001 prepara os estudantes para os processos seletivos de graduação no exterior. Esse é um ponto bem legal, a gente só trabalha com graduação, a gente não faz pós-mestrado, doutorado, intercâmbio, nosso foco é 100% esse. Durante esses anos já foram mais de 3 mil jovens, né, fazer graduação no exterior através dos nossos programas, e nesse período a gente já enviou mais de 25 mil candidaturas de alunos brasileiros. Então hoje dá para a gente dizer que, né, a gente tem uma base de dados aqui bem relevante, que ajuda muito nas nossas recomendações para os estudantes. Hoje a nossa equipe tem mais de 40 profissionais formados no exterior e que tiveram essa vivência, né, de fazer faculdade fora do Brasil. Eu fiz faculdade fora, a Lígia e o Gabriel também. Isso ajuda muito as famílias que estão se preparando, estão começando a entender, né, um pouco mais sobre o tema, e também os estudantes. E, sem dúvidas, o nosso maior motivo de orgulho são os resultados que os nossos alunos obtiveram ao longo dos anos. Aqui, algumas das principais universidades em que a gente já teve alunos aprovados nesses anos. E aqui tem um ponto bem relevante, pessoal, nós não temos nenhum tipo de convênio, relação comercial com as universidades, né? O nosso foco é ajudar vocês a se tornarem os melhores candidatos possíveis e enviarem as melhores candidaturas para as faculdades que melhor combinem com vocês. Hoje a gente atua em 6 países: Estados Unidos, Reino Unido, Canadá, Holanda, Austrália e Nova Zelândia. E sempre que eu mostro esse slide, eu estou conversando com os estudantes, né, sobre essa possibilidade de estudar fora, eu sinto aquele medo, né, aquela indecisão. Será que eu tenho chance? Será que dentro do que eu estou buscando eu conseguiria ser aprovado em uma universidade no exterior? E pensando nisso, a nossa equipe desenvolveu uma análise de perfil, onde vocês podem responder, né, algumas perguntas como país de preferência, suas notas, curso que você quer estudar e o orçamento planejado. E com essa, né, respondendo essa primeira análise de perfil, a gente consegue ter uma ideia inicial das chances de cada um de vocês, tá? Esse link está no chat, e para quem está começando a entender mais sobre o assunto, acho bem legal que vocês, né, façam esse link. E eu queria já deixa também para os próximos eventos que a gente vai ter, né? Então, para quem está começando a nos acompanhar agora, a gente faz eventos basicamente que quase toda terça e quinta. Na semana que vem, a gente vai ter um webinar explicando o programa de candidatura. Inclusive, né, para quem quer entender mais, tanto a Lígia quanto o Gabriel trabalham aqui conosco, eles são partes da equipe que trabalham com jovens no programa de candidatura. Depois vai ter uma entrevista, que é até o que eu vou fazer com a Carolina. Ela é uma aluna que se formou em NC State, em Ciências da Computação, e agora está trabalhando na Microsoft, e ela vai contar um pouquinho da trajetória dela. E no dia 28, a gente vai ter uma entrevista sobre como selecionar as universidades mais adequadas de acordo com o seu perfil. Tá? Então, fiquem ligados, né? Recomendo que vocês acompanhem aqui os nossos eventos. E agora, né, eu quero chamar o primeiro convidado aqui que vai fazer uma... Eu vou apresentar já os dois, mas vou chamar primeiro o Gabriel. Gabriel, você está aqui conosco?
E aí, tudo bem, pessoal?
Tudo bom, Gabriel? Vou apresentar aqui os dois convidados que vão participar com vocês antes da Holly. Um deles é o Gabriel, que estudou, né, Gabriel, Bachelor of Arts, com um major em árabe, estudos do Oriente Médio, e um minor em estudos transculturais e performance musical. Então, acho que dá para você falar exatamente o que é esse conceito de liberal arts, né?
Pois é, acho que a experiência universitária ali que eu tive dá para encapsular bem o que são as liberal arts colleges. Obrigado por todo mundo ter vindo hoje. Acho que quando a gente, para quem, bom, só reforçando, eu sou o Gabriel, sou orientador de redações aqui na Daqui para Fora. Trabalho com alguns alunos que estão aqui hoje. Quando a gente fala sobre estudar nos Estados Unidos, acho que uma das coisas que mais se destaca, que mais atrai alunos, com certeza foi algo que me atraiu, é essa possibilidade de você explorar várias áreas do conhecimento, de você sair um pouco daquele molde do que é esperado, muitas vezes quando a gente associa com ensino superior, e realmente tentar fazer essas conexões entre as disciplinas, né? E eu acho que nada representa melhor esse conceito de interdisciplinaridade, de curiosidade intelectual do que as liberal arts colleges. São universidades nos Estados Unidos que prezam muito por proporcionar uma experiência interdisciplinar para os alunos, por permitir que os alunos tenham contato com diversas áreas de conhecimento e que formem essas conexões intelectuais inusitadas, talvez. Então, é muito comum ver gente com cursos extremamente não relacionados uns aos outros, ou fazendo aulas que não tem nada a ver necessariamente com o major, mas que agregam tanto para a formação pessoal quanto profissional ali. E eu estou muito animado por poder estar aqui com a Holly Buttrey, que é uma Senior Dean of Admissions em Carlton, a universidade onde eu também me formei. E ela vai conversar com a gente, vai explicar um pouco para nós como funciona o sistema Liberal Arts. So, a apresentação vai ser em inglês, porque o português da Holly, ainda que seja muito bom, acho que ela ainda está quase lá no nível para poder fazer essa apresentação em português da próxima vez. So, yeah, welcome, Holly. Thank you for being here with us.
Obrigada a você. Thank you for having me. Ainda estou aprendendo português, and so I will be presenting in English. Thank you to all of you with Daqui Pra Fora for having me, and students, it's a privilege to get to talk with all of you this evening. As Gabrielle said, my name is Holly Buttrey, and I work for Carleton College. I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation with all of you today. So we're going to talk through liberal arts and sciences and what does that mean? And I want to begin by stating a few disclaimers. So I'm here as a representative of Carleton College. I was on the application review team when Gabrielle applied to Carleton College. I am also a Carleton alumna. I graduated in 2014, and so my own undergraduate experience has really been at Carleton and in Northfield, Minnesota in the US. I also think it's important to note that both of my parents went to liberal arts and sciences institutions, and so there was already this knowledge of college and liberal arts when I was growing up. And my hometown is near Dartmouth College. And so I imagine that's an institution that many of you are familiar with. And so that's where I'm coming from in terms of this presentation. And I wanted to begin talking briefly about that vocabulary, right? I say Carleton College, and college sounds really close to colégio, right? We are not a colégio. College in the United States is differentiated between a university, uma universidade, by the kind of degree it confers. And so what that means is at a college in the United States, you can receive a bachelor's degree. And that's it. That's the 4-year undergraduate degree. At a university in the United States, you can obtain that bachelor's degree, but also they are offering graduate degrees. This might be master's degrees, PhDs, doctoral degrees like a MD or a JD. And so the kind of degree that we're talking about will change between those two institutions. Today, I am only going to be talking about colleges and bachelor's degrees, so the 4 years of undergraduate education. And generally, colleges have smaller student bodies than the university counterparts in the United States. And generally, colleges are only undergraduates, so all of those students working towards the 4-year bachelor's degree. That was one piece of vocabulary. The next piece, and I think Gabrielle talked quite a bit about this, is liberal arts and sciences, right? This interdisciplinary approach, this idea that you need to make connections between ideas or departments that seem maybe unrelated. And liberal arts and sciences, often just called liberal arts, is a curricular approach. Essentially, this means that the courses that you will be taking, the classes in college, there is an emphasis on breadth and depth to topics, right? Thinking about Gabriel's experience, Arabic, but also Middle Eastern studies, but also cross-cultural studies. So really thinking about breadth across, but also depth, often in the form of research and also in a major. At liberal arts colleges, you do not have to declare your major, and often you can't declare your major until you're a few years in, which means you have time to be introduced to both the arts. Maybe that is creative writing, maybe that is painting, metalsmithing, dance, theater, as well as the sciences, including geology, physics, psychology, biology, computer science, etc. And in this time of exploration, students have the opportunity to explore new topics, new departments, and also to change their mind. And I think that's something really key in terms of the differences between going to university in Brazil, right? You take your vestibulares and then you are told, here is where you go. And that is the path you follow, versus in the United States, these liberal arts and sciences institutions are going to be saying, what are you excited about right now? How do you want to grow? And if and when you change your mind, we will help you navigate that way. And part of that is not having you choose your major, your focus of study, until halfway through your degree program. That is very common within the liberal arts and sciences curricula that you will see throughout the United States. And so with that, you might say, like, well, how do you make these decisions, right? If you are just told explore, how are you still able to get to the courses you need, make sure that you're ready to graduate on time, do internships that make sense for you? We all have support. And these supports are often social as well as curricular. And so I have a couple Carlton specific support resources up on this slide, but I want to make sure you understand that these resources are going to be available across institutions, right? And so one of the opportunities for support at Carlton include the international peer leaders. And so these are current Carlton students who are non-US citizens or students who grew up outside of the United States, and they act as peer leaders to incoming students. So they know already, like, oh yeah, this is how I opened up a bank account here in the US. Here's the kind of clothing I needed. Here were some of the expectations I was unaware of in the culture in the United States, the culture in Minnesota. There are people there to talk to when you feel homesick, when you are struggling with a particular professor or class. And then there are also more academic supports, for example, the Career Center or the Writing Center. The Writing Center is on this slide, and that is, as it sounds, a space where you can go to get one-on-one help with your written work. And this, again, is not specific to Carlton, but most liberal arts and sciences institutions are going to have an emphasis on writing. They want to make sure that you are a creative writer, but also a thesis-driven writer, that you can write a lab report, particularly students who are excited about the sciences. If you can write a really good grant proposal, you are going to thrive in the field of sciences. And so making sure that you are a strong writer and you are learning how to write is an essential piece of our student support. You will have advisors, so that will be a staff or faculty member at your institution that helps you select your classes, right? They know the graduation requirements. They know the requirements for different majors and programs on campus. And so making sure that you have that advising support, both while you do your liberal arts exploration and then also once you've declared your major. And so I do want to make sure you all know that while it's really open-ended at our liberal arts institutions, you will be supported during that exploration, because we want to make sure that you are staying on track and working towards graduation. And so one of the questions is like, who goes to a liberal arts college? And I think the answer is anyone could, right? But really thinking about the academic trajectory that you want to go on. And I want to go back to Gabriel's point, which was like making connections of seemingly different departments or disciplines. And I think we can even look to the pandemic we're in right now, where it's saying public health and politics and epidemiology and medicine. While you wouldn't necessarily study all of those things as a single major, at a liberal arts institution, you probably will take courses in the hard sciences, maybe a pre-medical type course. You will take classes in public health and sociology, but also in political science, international relations. And that is one example of why this interconnectedness, these interdisciplinary courses are essential. And so thinking about liberal arts students on the whole, these tend to be students who are excited about learning. They tend to be students who want to engage in a community. One of the aspects of liberal arts that I haven't really talked about is this residential piece. You'll notice one of these pictures, right? Students lounging in a dorm room. Most of the time at liberal arts and sciences institutions, you will live on campus. And so this means you get to engage with academics, with cerebral thought and philosophical chats with your friends beyond the confines of your class schedule and beyond the borders of a four-walled classroom space. And I think that's really important to understand, that the people who go to a liberal arts college are excited to engage with all aspects of learning, right? It's not just pen to paper or book to mind. It is talking with your friends. It is having animated conversations during class. It's taking those conversations into the dining halls and on your walks around campus. And so I don't think there's a single type of person who goes to a liberal arts college, but I think many people can find that liberal arts can suit them really well if they are excited about that learning process. Not only are liberal arts colleges normally smaller themselves, right? I mentioned that colleges tend to be smaller than universities. And part of that is when you only have undergraduate students and no master's students, PhDs, MDs, those graduate students, there simply are fewer people, right? And so with the smaller schools, these schools are also generally located in smaller towns. And this is not always the case. You can think of Macalester College, which is another small private liberal arts and sciences institution in the state of Minnesota. They're actually in the Minnesota state capital in St. Paul. So they are in an urban center. But most schools, we are in smaller towns. And so what does that look like? Especially if you're coming from a big city like São Paulo, if you're coming from Rio de Janeiro, like wherever you are coming from. I mean, even like Porto Alegre, which I think people consider a small town or a small city in Brazil, is much larger than a place like Northfield with 20,000 residents. What this means often is that the campuses are vibrant. We know that there's not a music venue in town. So there are music venues on our campuses. We know that there are not many clubs and organizations off campus for you to join. And so there are over 100, maybe 200, 300 clubs and organizations ranging from Model United Nations to robotics, to cooking clubs, to athletics, intramural sports, knitting clubs, book clubs, really trying to engage students with each other and with the campus community. Generally, these smaller towns mean that you can walk to coffee shops and restaurants. Generally means there will be a grocery store, but maybe not everything that you'll find in Brazil will be in those grocery stores. It generally means there will be a campus community for athletics, for the arts. And so your roommate will come and support you during your presentations or performances, and you will support them. It's a lot of getting to know each other in these small towns rather than exploring the city or getting to know the town around you. And again, I want to note that the colleges are aware of this, and that's why they bring guest lecturers to campus. That's why they have all sorts of performances, whether that's dance or theater, public speaking presentations. There are often museums on campuses that have rotating installations that are available for you. And then the student activities office at Carleton, for example, we have a cinema on campus and there are movies being shown every weekend. There are lots of ways to stay busy outside of your homework, even in these small towns. And so again, what are these students doing? I want to note that for a number of these schools as well, we're in the north. If you think about the Northeast, I grew up again very close to Dartmouth College, and we got snow every single year, like 2 or 2.5 meters of snow a year, right? Like very different than the climate in Brazil. And that's similar to what I receive here in Minnesota. And so there's lots of opportunity to learn to ski, to snowshoe, to ice skate. The main quad at Carleton, we call it the bald spot, and we actually freeze it in the winter. So you have 2 side-by-side ice hockey rinks. There are book clubs and ways to engage with your professors. Maybe it's even research outside of your classroom work. There are cooking clubs and organizations. I will say one thing that I find really fun about Carleton is we have a cookie house. And so if you are excited about cooking and baking and spending time with your friends, there is a house on campus that is unlocked and available to students 24/7. And you can always go in and bake chocolate chip cookies. There are always ingredients, right? The butter, the eggs, the chocolate chips for what you're baking. And there's one rule. And that rule is you have to share whatever you're baking with whoever comes next. I mentioned athletics as well. And so if you're excited about rock climbing, if you're excited about rugby, ultimate frisbee, if you want to play football, that is all available for you as well. And then also thinking about what do you do over breaks? There are lots of internships and externship opportunities, and that will be the same across schools. And that's something to certainly keep in mind, right? Who are the alumni at these institutions as well? And what do they do? Here's a picture of the cookies. I think also thinking about traditions and community at these institutions. So as you're selecting schools and thinking about what is important to me and what do I want out of a school, asking about traditions and how do you describe the community at your institution can help you understand some of the differences between schools that might seem more similar on paper. With liberal arts and sciences institutions, right, these smaller communities, I think you will often find many fun, maybe quirky traditions. I mentioned the chocolate chip cookies, but another tradition you see on this slide is that of Friday flowers. And so the Carleton community, I would describe it as like kind and collaborative and adventurous. I think you have to be adventurous to move to southern Minnesota. And this tradition is one that I think accentuates those first 2 qualities, the kindness and the collaboration. This tradition is every Friday, a florist comes to the college campus and sells flowers. And so you can buy a flower for your friend and say like, oh, Gabrielle, I know that you have a big exam coming up. So I'll buy you a flower and say, good luck on your exam and put it in the mailbox, right? With Ligia, I know she has a dance performance coming up. So I'll get her a flower, and say, break a leg and put that in her mailbox. And I think that also speaks to the sense of like safety and security on the Carleton campus in that our mailboxes are open. These are other ways to think about community at these small colleges. And I think you will often find that students feel really safe leaving their laptops on the library table when they go to use the restroom, that students feel comfortable walking across campus late at night when it's dark out and you just have the lights available. And so thinking about how does community manifest in that way, and often with liberal arts colleges, it is a tight-knit community. People are going to know your names, right? You are going to make friends in your classes because you only have 11 other students in your classes. Your professors will know your names and will invite you over to their houses as well. And so thinking about how does each school show their community and what kind of traditions come along with it. I mentioned, right, like what comes next, thinking about that alumni network. And for a lot of students, the what comes next is more school. And so that's the first outcome here, right? Will you be prepared for the real world after graduating from a liberal arts and sciences institution? And the answer is yes. But it's also, you'll be prepared for two different approaches to the real world, or like two initial stepping stones. All of the liberal arts colleges are going to have an emphasis on small class sizes, an emphasis on undergraduate research, an emphasis on that exploration, making connections. And that means you are going to have really good letters of recommendation because the professors are going to know who you are. You're going to be able to conduct research and therefore publish as an undergraduate. That will be able to bolster your application to graduate schools down the road. So thinking about that graduate school outcome, even if it's not immediately following, maybe it's 1, 2, 3 years down the line, you will be very well prepared for your graduate degree after attending a liberal arts college. Similarly, employers will find the flexible and nimble thinking of liberal arts graduates really appealing, right? Maybe you're a computer science major, you're excited about doing some back-end code, you've been hired by Google, but not only can you code, but you also know how to engage with people on a team, right? Your computer science thesis was actually done in a group, and so you know how to collaborate. You know how to communicate, because even though you were a computer science major, you also had to take English classes, history classes, where it was really important for you to be able to talk about themes that you got out of a reading. And so really thinking about prepared for the real world, liberal arts absolutely prepares you for the real world through not only the hands-on, the research, the in-class discussion, the readings, but also in terms of that flexibility, that nimbleness, that ability to create connections between different thoughts and disciplines. I really want to underscore that for you, because I think sometimes students believe, or maybe parents believe, that if you don't have one specific track, business, you won't be able to get into business. And what we find with the liberal arts is that many of our graduates do go into business from a variety of different majors. There are so many different pathways to get to where you end up. And I know this slide is like really busy, but let me tell you a little bit about it. And so some of the reasons why I think it's important for you to think about outcomes as like a multi-pronged thing here is the middle depiction is all of the majors offered at Carleton, and then the pathways from them going to outcomes like education, like policy, like medicine. And you can see that every different major goes to every different outcome. And so you're not only being prepared for the next step that your major could take you, right? So if you think about art history, could take you directly to working in a museum. Art history can also take you towards medicine. Art history can also take you towards education and teaching or policy work. And so this pathways example is one, it's specific to Carleton, but not unique to Carleton, in that most liberal arts colleges will be able to say the same thing. There are history majors who end up as dentists. There are chemists who end up as history teachers, right? And so thinking about that flexibility, there also, I think, is a lot to say about the Alumni Network. And so as you look at your colleges, think about that sense of community. Are these people you want to be like friends with right now? And are these the kind of people that you want to connect with down the line? Will these alumni help you get jobs? Will they hire you? Do you want to work for these kinds of people? And often that can be answered through another support resource, the Career Center. And so I have the Carleton Career Center here as an example. The Carleton Career Center works with students starting their first term on campus. You do not need to know your major. You do not need to know what you want to do in terms of job or employment or a career down the line. And they work with you to better understand what you like to do. And that's not just academic, but I like to sit behind a computer, or I like to be outside. I like to engage with people. I'd rather work by myself. These are some of the questions that the liberal arts has you ponder, both through your academics and through these support resources as you work through your 4 years. A lot of these outcome conversations, right, stem from a concern about money. And that's legitimate. It's entirely legitimate. I think particularly as you see liberal arts and sciences institutions are private institutions, and we have large comprehensive fees. I think Carleton's right now is about $76,000 US every single year. For most families, that is not affordable. And so as you go through this process of looking for schools, and specifically looking at liberal arts colleges, you will need to do a deep dive into each institution's policies, because every institution is going to have a slightly different approach to affordability. You're going to need to ask questions and understand that there are many different sets of rules and regulations because they're specific to each institution. Oops, pardon me. So I have examples here, which is, for example, financial aid documents. If you are a US citizen living abroad or a permanent resident, you will have different financial aid documents than non-US citizens. You'll have to consider things like need-based financial aid and merit-based financial aid. Need-based financial aid is based on what a family needs in order to pay for an institution. For example, if your family can pay $2,000 US of the $76,000, your need is $74,000. Which colleges will cover that for you? Carleton is one of them, but not the only one. But Carleton does not offer merit-based financial aid. There are some institutions that do offer merit-based aid. I mentioned Macalester College earlier, and they are a merit-based institution. Some schools will have a minimum requirement in terms of what a family needs to put forward in order to receive the I-20. And so you just need to think through, and some institutions do not offer financial aid to non-US citizens. If you and your family are looking for financial aid, you probably shouldn't apply to those schools that aren't going to offer you any. If a school admits you without helping you with the affordability aspect, that can be really challenging. And so I wanted to give you the example of Carleton here, though again, we are but one institution of many. Carleton does need-based financial aid, as I mentioned, which means that we meet 100% of what a family needs all 4 years. This comes in the form of grants, loans, and student employment. We will require the CSS profile, which is the College Scholarship Search profile for all of our students, both US citizens and non-US citizens. And that does have a $25 fee in order to submit it. We also request a certification of finances for US citizens. And if the CSS profile is impossible, if the certification of finances is impossible because of those fees to submit, Carlton will also accept the International Student Financial Aid application, the IFSA form, but that's just us. There are some schools that will not accept IFSA. There are some that will not accept the CSS profile. It really depends on the institution. This is one example of all of the detailed information that goes into getting to know a college, especially a liberal arts college. I now want to turn it over to Ligia to lead us through some questions to see. I know some things have come through the chat, but I'm going to stop my screen share so that we can come back together. And students, I will put a link in the chat. So if you do want to learn more about Carlton, you can fill out the form attached to this link, but I'll turn it over now so we can do questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Holly. It was great. Very much clarifying what liberal arts mean. But on that note, I see you guys as questions. First off, I would like to ask Holly, what is liberal arts? What do you mean by liberal arts? Does that mean like arts, like painting and that kind of visual arts? What is liberal arts?
Yeah, so liberal arts and sciences is the curriculum that goes along with breadth and depth at an undergraduate institution. And so, yes, it could certainly mean the arts, right? If you are excited about becoming a studio art major and you want to do metalsmithing, or you want to do painting, or you want to be a theater major and learn how to do set work and costume design and performances, yes, liberal arts can be all about the arts, but the idea behind the curriculum is exploration. It is engaging with a breadth of studies, but also diving deeply into a major or two majors or a minor down the line. And so again, that idea of both breadth and depth within liberal arts.
Great. Now, someone asked, Holly, based on what you said, liberal arts colleges are also focused on various types of researches. However, I've read an article where the author said that the opposite of liberal arts is research universities. Is that true?
Great question. So kind of is the answer. Let me try to help wade through this. So liberal arts colleges offer lots of undergraduate research. All of the professors at liberal arts colleges are expected to do research, and the people they do the research with are undergraduates. So there's lots of research happening at liberal arts institutions. A research university is one where the professors, the PhD students, the graduate students have mandatory research that they need to complete. This does not mean, however, that the undergraduate students have access to that research. The research, the R1 institutions are more focused or focused differently on the graduate student experience, the PhD experience, because that's what's being offered. You can do research at both of them. Just the undergraduate research experience at a liberal arts college is only for undergraduate students, versus at a research university, if you're trying to do research as an undergraduate, you will also have graduate students and PhD students who are interested in that same research. So it might be more challenging to get access to that research during your first year. But both options certainly allow you to do research as an undergraduate.
Great. Someone asked, do liberal arts colleges offer summer programs, like summer camps or the like?
Yeah, great question. Lots of our colleges do, yes. So Carleton has like the Summer Liberal Arts experience, SLAI is the name of it. So I think it's the Summer Liberal Arts Institute. And so you can take classes with our professors over the summers as before you're applying, right? So as a high school student. There are also some like pre-college programs that we offer for some of our incoming students, right? So at Carleton, for example, we have what's called CUBE, which is for students who need some support with their quantitative reasoning. Maybe you didn't do as well on maths in high school, and so you need a refresher before college. And so that's something we offer to you rather than you apply for. There will also be some colleges that during their like new student week or new student orientation, they will take trips. And so you have like bonding and community experiences before college that way. But certainly there are lots of institutions, including Carleton, that do have summer programs for high school students prior to when you apply. Mm-hmm.
Great, but do they offer summer courses during their undergraduate studies?
Great question. And that will depend on the institution. Carleton does not do on-campus summer programs, but there is a study abroad program. So you can study off campus doing economics at the London School of Economics and in Cambridge in the United Kingdom. There are some other summer study abroad programs, but none of them will be on Carleton's campus. I know there are other schools like Dartmouth College that run on a quarter system, and one of their quarters is during the summer. They have a sophomore summer, so you're required to be there at least that summer when you're a sophomore. And so that will depend on the school, and there will be some, yes, that do summer programs while you're a student, like Dartmouth on campus, and there will be others like Carleton that do not have summer classes available. Great question.
Awesome. Someone asked, are liberal arts colleges the same as community colleges?
Good question. The answer is no. Liberal arts colleges are 4-year institutions and they give bachelor's degrees. Community colleges offer 2-year degrees. So those are most often called associate's degrees or an AA degree in the United States. There are certainly times where students will go to a community college first and then transfer into one of the liberal arts colleges. And you can take a liberal arts approach at a community college where you're exploring lots of different departments and disciplines. But the biggest difference between community college and a liberal arts college is the kind of degree that we offer. And so you cannot get a bachelor's degree at a community college, but you will get your bachelor's degree from a liberal arts college. Yeah, good clarifying question.
Cool. Another question, what type of university would you suggest for a science major? And would you say that liberal arts colleges are better for studying abroad when you're studying science?
So I was not a science major, so I think you should take this with a grain of salt. But I'm inclined to say that if you are a science major who also wants to take classes in another language, or wants to take English and creative writing classes, or wants to take political science classes on top of your science courses, then a liberal arts degree would be a great place for you. If you're a science major who's really excited about your science major and you don't want to take too much outside of that, then I don't think a liberal arts college would be a good fit for you, right? If you're going to have to take classes beyond your major and that's exciting for you, a liberal arts college is a good fit. But if you really want to focus on that one department or subject, then I think going a different route is probably better. When it comes to study abroad, I can't speak to this super well because A, I was not a science major, and B, I really only know Carleton. And so what my first piece of advice is definitely research the institutions if study abroad is important to you, to make sure that you can study abroad at the schools you're applying to. I can say that at Carleton, you can absolutely study abroad as a science major. A number of our science departments even offer their own study abroad programs, right? So for example, Carleton, we are in the middle of Minnesota, in the middle of the United States, not near an ocean, but many of our students are excited about studying marine biology. And so you can go abroad during the winter to Australia and do marine biology. Lots more ocean coastline in Australia than in Minnesota. And so that's one example of being able to study abroad in the sciences at Carleton. There are also geology programs, environmental studies programs that you can take advantage of. So that's probably not a satisfying answer, but certainly for Carleton, yes, you can study abroad, but that will depend on the institution you ultimately enroll in.
Great answer. Completely satisfactory. Now, on that note, I just, because there's another question here in regards of what type of student should consider liberal arts. I think you've talked a little bit about it, but maybe we should get more into it in the sense of, should I go for liberal arts? Should I go for a research university? What kind of student would prefer, would adjust better, as they say here at a liberal arts college?
Yeah, I mean, and that adjustment question is so important, right? And I think that gets back to community. And you will find some larger institutions may feel similarly collaborative or may feel similarly full of traditions as a liberal arts college. And when we look at applications and see, oh, this student is applying to Carleton and these other schools, it is common for us to see students who apply to Carleton and a number of other liberal arts schools, but then also large research universities. The University of Minnesota, for example, we see a lot of overlap in applications between Carleton and the University of Minnesota. And so I think there is something to be said in a positive way of applying to both liberal arts colleges and research universities, so that as you learn about the schools and continue to do your research, you are then able to say like, oh, I've been admitted now to both of them and I want to go this route. In terms of, you know, like who would do well at a liberal arts college, again, it's this idea of people who are excited about many topics, who want to make connections and build bridges between disciplines. And maybe that's, you know, I just don't know what I want to major in. And so often when you are applying to larger universities, similar to the system in Brazil, you need to apply into your major, or you need to apply into the College of Engineering, or you need to apply into the College of Communications. Versus at a liberal arts college, you can say, I might be interested in engineering and I might be interested in communications, and try them both out before declaring your major. I hope that added a little bit more robustness to that answer.
Absolutely. Now, someone said, first off, your Portuguese accent pronunciation is awesome. Carleton has a special quote unquote special major. Is it a common thing to do? Like many students do it?
Oh, muito obrigada. In terms of the special major, no, it's not particularly common for students to do that at Carleton. There are other institutions, however, where you have to create your own major, right? And so if you are excited about that, there are schools where you get to build a major from the ground up, or where it is much more common to do a special major. At Carleton, we see maybe 1 or 2 graduating students a year, and that's 1 or 2 out of 500. And so not common, but it is there specifically for students who say, oh, nothing quite fits where I want to be. I can give you the example. When I was graduating, I had a friend who ended up graduating with a special major in animal cognitive science. And so this is someone who was really excited about using animals to help folks who have anxiety or any kind of physical ailment. So working a lot with therapy dogs and with therapy horses down the line. And so that was something that was unique to them, and they went through a special major. I would also recommend that if it's possible, Ligia, if you're able to ask Gabriel, because I do believe he also did a special major and might have more insight into how that worked at Carleton specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as common as just like trying your own combination of majors and minors, but it's certainly possible. I think like Holly's example, I was really passionate about literature and Arabic, but also studying history and getting to like do some work with sociology. So all of these different subjects fascinated me, and I was like, I don't really want to choose any of them or like any one of them exclusively. So it wasn't enough for me to go to a liberal arts college. In the end, I was like, okay, let me actually do this. And obviously, I can only talk about Carleton because that's the only place where I did that. But there is like a little bit of a bureaucracy. The process is a little bit long, but it's certainly doable. And going back to something that Holly said earlier, there is a lot of support throughout this. So I had like 2 advisors. So because if you were applying for a special major, you don't get just one, you get 2 of them. And then on top of those 2 advisors, you get to talk to all sorts of different professors who you hope to work with. You can talk to other students in the fields that you're interested in, and everyone's just kind of trying to help you make that work. So yeah, it was a long process and not necessarily the easiest one, but it's definitely a possibility, and for some students, myself included, it's worth it. And yeah, a very real possibility.
I just want to point out that differs from each college. So not every college like Carleton has a special major. So you'd have to do some research to check which one offers that opportunity, which is an awesome opportunity. Very well. Someone asked if liberal arts colleges offer more elective classes than other types of universities, more than research universities.
I'm not entirely sure I know the answer to this, because you can think about it right at research universities where there are 50,000 students and quadruple the number of faculty, there are probably more courses offered, right? But at many research universities, when you are applying into a single major, you then take a very prescribed set of courses. And so even though there might be more elective classes offered, you may only get to take 4 or 5 during your 4 years. Versus at a liberal arts college, and Carleton actually has a fairly restrictive curriculum. We say you have to do distribution requirements and you have to do your major. And so only about 1/3 of your classes at Carleton are in electives. About 1/3 are in a major and 1/3 are in distribution requirements. There are some institutions, if you think like Kalamazoo College in Michigan, if you think Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, that have open curricula. And so then most of your classes are electives, right? Where you get to decide to take anything you want. Versus Carleton has those distribution requirements. And even further along that scale, right, thinking about electives, institutions, I think like UChicago still has a core curriculum where their first-year students take the same courses, a prescribed set of first-year courses. And so I don't know how that affects the electives, right? But in terms of the classes you get to select during your 4 years, that will also depend. Even among liberal arts colleges, and I guess UChicago would not call themselves liberal arts arts. That's probably a bad example. But we'll use the open curricula at Kalamazoo and Brown University, where you have even more electives than you would take at Carleton. I think that was kind of the question, right? How many electives you get to take rather than how many total classes are offered, because at a research university, there will be more total classes, but you probably will not get to take advantage of them.
Precisely. Now about applying, someone asked if they could apply undecided for a liberal arts college. And also, if I want to do a double major, but in two very different subjects like physics and music, would it be more fitting to apply for a liberal arts college or a research university?
Yeah, great questions. So I'll say the first one, applying undecided. Everyone is actually undecided. You do not get to declare your major until about halfway through at liberal arts colleges. So maybe you have an idea like, oh, I want to be a physics major. You don't actually get to declare that until the end of your second year at liberal arts colleges. So everyone is undecided. You'll have the option on like the Common App or the Coalition application to say, I'm interested in these subjects, but that is by no means a declaration of your major, versus yes, at these research institutions, you will have to apply into a specific major. And that gets us to the second piece there, right? Where it is very easy to double major in things like physics and music, which honestly are quite related, right? When you think about sound and physics there. And so very easy at a liberal arts college to double major. At Carleton, about 20% of our students double major, and that's low. Carleton requires a thesis project. We call it a senior comprehensive project, a COMPS, for every major that you declare. And because of that, it really reduces the number of double majors. At many other institutions, thinking like Bowdoin, you have the option of doing something like a thesis, but it's not required. And so if you do a double major, you don't have to do two thesis projects. You have a little more flexibility there. And so thinking about that double major, easy peasy at a liberal arts college. At a research university, because you are applying into your major, it may not be possible to do a double major if they are super different. And that'll be something you need to research within the college and the university itself. There will be some times, right, at a research university where you could be admitted into two different colleges for two different majors. But often it will not be possible to double major in such disparate subjects at a research university. So I encourage you to do a lot of research in advance for that one.
And there's another question, which I think you basically answered it, but we can apply to this case just to confirm for the person asking. This person is interested in physics and electric engineering. They want to do a double major in these topics, these subjects, and also study math on the side. A liberal arts college is or is not a good opportunity to do that?
Yeah, good question. I will say upfront, like if you are doing physics, you will also be doing math. And if you are doing electrical engineering, you will also be doing math. And so it'll be very hard to avoid math from those in general. I will also say when it comes to engineering, that is a postgraduate degree here in the United States most of the time. And so there is only one liberal arts college that I know of that actually offers engineering within the 4 years of undergrad, and that would be Swarthmore College in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. Most liberal arts colleges are going to offer a program with another school to do engineering at an undergraduate level. So Carleton, for example, has what's called a 3-2 program with Washington University in St. Louis. And Washington University in St. Louis not a liberal arts college, and they have engineering available at the bachelor's level, that undergraduate degree. So you can do 3 years at Carleton in mathematics or in physics as your major, and then 2 years at Wash U, and you end with 2 bachelor's degrees. One would be physics or mathematics at Carleton, the other one would be engineering at Wash U. Most Carleton graduates and most liberal arts graduates in general who go on to do engineering as a graduate degree. And so liberal arts colleges with that access to research, with your small class sizes in the sciences, getting to know your professors and therefore having really strong letters of recommendation are really good candidates for a master's or doctoral degree in engineering down the road. But most liberal arts colleges do not offer engineering at the bachelor's degree. And so if you are set on engineering specifically, you most likely will not find that at the liberal arts colleges, and therefore you will apply to research universities.
Now, speaking of applying, once again, what should I do so that my application stands out? What advice could you give us to those who intend to apply early decision Carleton to Carleton?
Oh my, what an exciting question. My number one piece of advice for students in your application is to be yourself. I am looking to admit you, not your counselor, not your parents, not your grandma, not your friend, looking to admit you. Hopefully you can see based on this conversation, like, I am a real person, and I am the person who will be reading applications from Brazil to Carleton. And the best way for me to be able to advocate for students is to be able to get to know them. So I would say, for example, if you have questions about Carleton after this, send me an email. Right? It's easy if you look up Holly Carleton, I'm pretty sure I show up. Holly Buttrey will certainly get you to Carleton. It is not a common name. And so reach out, right? Make sure that I know the name, your name, before I go into the application process. I would say being yourself also includes those essays that you'll write, the supplemental essay specific to Carleton, if that is truly specific to Carleton, really helps stand out. And then I imagine that's similar to other institutions as well, right? If you are able to show I am truly interested in your institution for these very specific reasons, that helps us better understand. Rather than, I am interested in liberal arts for these broad general reasons, that's harder to make a case for Carleton specifically, or for Haverford specifically, or Occidental specifically, regardless of where you're applying. Being yourself and making sure that you know the school you're applying to. I guess that's 2 pieces of advice, but those are what popped to mind for me.
Great. And I just want to add, as a strategist at Becky Profora, that I always encourage my students to do a thorough research of the place that they want to apply to. So please, guys, do your homework, do a good research, because as Holly said, that will help you a lot in really showing them that you should be there, that's the place for you. Now, someone also asked about what would be a bad mistake, like a very bad mistake in your why Carleton essay?
A great question. So in that research, you will discover that Carleton College is not the same as, Whitman College. It is not the same as Carleton University in Canada. And so it does make me feel sad when students are writing, I love the trimester calendar and I'm really excited to live in a big city. And I'm like, oh, we're not in a big city. So trimester, yes. Big city, no. Very confusing. Why Carleton? Or, and this is why I want to attend Oberlin. I don't work at Oberlin. And so thinking about those supplemental essays in particular, if you can copy and paste that essay, it is not a specific supplement, right? And so really thinking about, I will have students every year who talk about how excited they are to live in Canada, how much they want to like explore a new country. And I'm like, okay, fascinating. Unfortunately, I am the Carleton in the United States, not the, and this is, I think, a good example of the liberal arts college in the United States versus the large research university in Canada, and being able to differentiate there. I think that's like my personal pet peeve. Generally, you don't see huge mistakes or whatnot in the application. I'm struggling to think of one that I've seen that is like absurd. I have on occasion, like students have like plagiarized. That's really horrible. Do not plagiarize. Do not steal other people's work. But generally, I think students know not to do that. And so again, getting back to Ligia, exactly researching the institutions to make sure that you're responding about that specific school.
Additionally, tangentially to this, someone asked, so it's important that I know myself well and I know the institution well so that I can apply, have a strong application.
Yep, I would agree with that. Yeah, knowing yourself, admittedly, when you are like 17 is a challenge. I'm still learning about myself and I am much older than 17 these days. But I again think that's a benefit to a liberal arts institution, right? Is you are not tracking yourself into a specific discipline or department for the next 4 years. You are telling yourself you have time to explore, like, maybe I know myself well enough to know that I don't know what I want to study yet. And I know that's a lot of layers there, but giving yourself the opportunity to continue to get to know yourself, to continue to grow as a scholar and as a person, is readily available at a liberal arts institution. And so I will note that as part of that self-knowledge piece.
Awesome. And finally, about financial aid. Does the student have to commit to paying back any financial aid they take from the university?
Great question. And as you've heard, unfortunately, a number of times today, it depends. So it will be essential to understand your financial aid when you receive it from the college or university. So at Carlton, for example, if you are a US citizen, we package loans within the US citizens' financial aid packages. Loans do need to be paid back. For our non-US citizens, we try not to package loans, meaning that the money that we are providing is in the form of grants, which means you do not need to pay it back. Carleton does, however, include student employment as part of the financial aid package. And so this means that our students, both US citizens and non-US citizens, need to be working during the school year. It's like 8 to 10 hours a week. So it's not 0 hours, but it's not a full-time job. And that work expectation is part of the financial aid package. And so if you decide not to put that money into your tuition, you will need to find another way to account for that. It's about $3,000, maybe $2,500 a term, is for students to be working as part of their financial aid package. And that's Carleton specifically, right? I know there are schools like Amherst College that does not have an employment piece, right? That is not a requirement within their financial aid packages. Once you get into schools that are looking at merit-based financial aid, right? There very well could be pieces where you need to maintain a certain GPA. you need to be in a certain major or a certain department in order for you to continue to receive that merit-based financial aid. And so not really paying it back, right? That would really be when you think about loans. But there could be instances where your merit-based aid is taken away if you no longer meet the criteria for the merit. I hope that helped. I know there's a lot of within financial aid that's pretty tricky to navigate, but I hope that gives at least an initial overview.
That was great. What I could say might help because translating might help. When Holly says a loan, and that it's a loan, that's financiamento, guys. When she says scholarships or grants, those are bolsas. So loans, you have to pay back. Scholarships, grants, you don't have to. But yes, you have to research and check what each school offers for financial aid. Holly, I think that's it for the questions. Is there anything else you would like to say?
Oh, just thank you all so much for your time today. I completely understand that these big concepts, right, of liberal arts, of moving to a new place, of how can you do research at not a research university can be really tricky. And so please continue to reach out to me, reach out to your counselors at Daqui Para Fora, ask Gabrielle all the questions you need about Carlton. But truly a privilege to be able to talk with all of you today. And I hope there is a day where I get to meet you all in person. But I hope this is the start of a conversation rather than just the end of a presentation. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Holly. It was great, just great.
Thank you, Holly.
And guys, if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me and Gabrielle, and have a great evening.